Hello everyone, this is Chompsky. I hope everyone had a great trading week. It was pretty brutal this week with the news. If you were able to scrape out some profits, congratulations. I think a lot of people, they struggled because the market characteristics did change quite a bit this week after all the red news and a few things that just happened in the world. So that is part of trading, which leads me to the disclaimer. I have to talk about the disclaimer. If you take a minute, please read the disclaimer. It's at chompsky.net. It's also in the description of this video. And none of this is going to be financial advice or trading advice. I'm not a financial advisor, so please speak to one if you need one. Don't do anything I do. Just use this video for your entertainment. And that leads me to the video. So this video is going to basically be a quick run through on how to set up the signals if you wanted to create maybe a strategy or some kind of alert system inside of NinjaTrader for the Chompsky Bands Pro. And if you're using any of my indicators, the Chompsky indicators do tend to have built-in signals that you can go in and do something similar to what I'm going to show you. And so if you wouldn't mind, we will jump onto the strategy builder and we will just show you how to do that here. Some of you may already know how to do this. You'll go into your accounts page here, go to new, and then click strategy builder. And once you click that, it should bring up the strategy builder for NinjaTrader. I think I already have it open, so I'm just gonna, yeah, here we go. I have one open. Once you get that open, you should have a page that looks like this. Jump up to the next page and we'll rename this right here to Band Signal Tester, or whatever name you want to give it. And we'll leave it on bar close for the method. The series is going to be, we'll just leave it blank. That's basically what series or instrument you want it on for time or the bar type. And then we'll go over here in this. Right here would be inputs. If you wanted to change inputs, you could literally customize them all. We don't need to do that necessarily. We'll just jump here to the conditions and actions page, and this is based off of an if this happens, then this happens rule. Pretty simple. The top will be the if, then this down here will happen, and we'll start with the then first so we know what we're doing. We're going to highlight the chart whenever an action happens, and you click this little add button down in the bottom. Oh, forgive me, one of my indicators here, it just for ArcAI does this nonsense because you have to download their suite to get any of their indicators, and unfortunately it makes you go through this. There it is. Alright, so now that nonsense is done, we want to look for set background color. And you can change this to any color you want. We'll do the longs first, so we'll do maybe a green color. We could do lime, maybe a green yellow, or something just a little bit off green, so it's not exactly the same color as the band color down there, which is generally going to be more of a lime color. Oh goodness, look at that. Let's see if I can click all these off. And that is part of using the Arc BXT bars that you're looking at right here. They are part of that suite. So, alright, so back to the if setting here. We'll jump in the indicators. We want to go down to C's for Chompsky, or you can actually hit CH, and it should bring you there pretty quickly. Even CHO if you have to, Chompsky. There we go. I have several versions of the bands because I've been working on them for a long time. And so to identify the signals, and this is in the guide if you want it broken down already, you scroll down to the bottom and you want the value plots here, and each value plot has its own type of signal. And so we'll just start with maybe first entries, just so you can get an idea of what to do next. And what you want to do is the equals right here. Go to miscellaneous here and scroll down to where the numeric value becomes an option, and you want to change that to either a plus or negative value. And we're just going to go with a 1. So whenever it flashes a 1 onto the signal value plot here in the code, you will get this action down here. And so if we've done our work correctly, we should be able to theoretically have this highlight whenever that changes colors. Now, the bands here are not set to default, so we'll have to open a new chart and do that. But first, we will compile the code to see if it works. And it may take a few seconds to do. If you have any other code windows open, they will all try to compile. Alright, we do appear to have compiled. So we will give it a second. It's still compiling my background. Yep, still compiling it. There it is. Alright, so we will jump over to a different chart where we can just open these bands up. Maybe one of these blank charts here. And what we will do here is open up the bands on default settings so we can test this out. Give it just a second here. Alright, so now we're going to open up the strategies. Right click on the chart, click strategies here, and then we'll scroll down, and whatever you named your indicator is going to be what this indicator is called here. And we just want to turn this on. We'll open it up onto this area here. That means it's on your chart technically, but you will have to, we'll change it to high fill rates just so it uses tick data, and then we'll hit enable and apply. And this won't take trades right now because there's nothing to enter a trade, but if we've done our work correctly, the first entries should now highlight, and it'll tell you exactly where those entries are. And as you can see, we have nailed it. All of the first entries are now highlighted. And so we can go back in the code now here. Just double click your if criteria up here. And what we will do next is we will go to the signals down at the bottom, and we'll change that to whatever signal you want it to be. Maybe the longs for the second entry or the shorts for the second entry, depending on what you want to do there. If I want a short for the first entry, they're actually set up slightly different. I believe you have to do a negative right here. And that's done just because the second entries they had to be coded quite differently, so you might find it a little bit strange, but it is what it is. It will work pretty much the same either way. Give it a second to compile. Move that out of the way. And we'll wait for the other charts here, our code boxes here to compile. There it is. And then we're going to hit F5 just to reload this chart. Yes, we want to reload it with the bot on. And if we've done our work correctly, it's still calculating. Now it will highlight the shorts, and there it is. So all of the short first entries are now highlighted. So we know we are utilizing the correct signals. Alright, so we don't really want to highlight the signals here, so you might leave that on. It's up to you, but what we do want to do is figure out how to test these signals. And let's say we don't want to test the first entry or whatever. We can change that later, but for now we'll just stick with that for simplicity. And we'll go back into the inputs and variables, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a take profit. So we'll just call it profit, and we'll leave it at an integer, and we'll set the default to maybe 50, and we'll add one more, and we'll call it stop loss, and we'll set the default here for 50, so it's a 1-for-1 just out of the box. And now we need to put an entry on the then criteria for the conditions and actions. And so we'll go to add down here, and then we'll go to order management this time, And now we want to enter a short position. And you want to be careful because exits are also in this option. Alright, and we'll just leave it just like that. Enter a short position. Now be careful, if you actually leave this running on an account, this can enter a trade with that option set, so do not just openly allow this thing to run without realizing what you're doing there. Alright, we're going to click next. And now we're in the stops and targets criteria. So you want to hit add. And the first thing we will add is going to be a profit target. Now this is a little bit different. You could just set a static value, but we created an input. So we want to hit set. And then we want to go to our user inputs that we created and select profit. And that will now use the input that we have on that other page where it defaults to 50. And you can change it from currency to ticks as well, since NinjaTrader does use ticks. So be sure to switch that. There's also some other options in here that you can get into later, but for a generic bot, this mode right here should work pretty good. We'll go to the stop loss next, and we want to make sure we do the same thing with the ticks. And the value we want to set from our user inputs as a stop loss. And now we compile this. And give it just a second to compile. Now on the other charts as well. And we'll move this out of the way here. Alright, so now we've taken the highlights off. So if we take, I think, yeah, we took the highlights off. So if we hit F5, it will reset, but this time we're not going to get the same effect with the highlights, because we now have a bot that utilizes the signals for entries, short entries. So to see those, you hit Control and then E, and it will tell you, like right here, you can hit it again, Control E, to get where it's selling short or trying to sell short, and where it's basically entering and exiting if you have these taking these trades. And so as you see now, we have a bot that is technically taking the first entries on these trades. So if you right click on the chart and go to strategy performance, you can go to the historical value, historical records for the trades and see how well it did or didn't do. In this case, it did fairly well, especially for a 1-to-1. That's not bad at all. That is on the NQ, so you do have a massive drawdown. Well, I mean, I was looking at this. That's actually not that bad, to be honest. I expected it to do worse, but anywho, the signals are doing what they need to do, and you can test them to a point right here. The problem is, if you go into the strategy, you're going to find that all you have as options to change are the profit and the stop loss. And you can't just go into the bands and change the settings and suddenly the signals will change, because they're not tied into that. So to get those individual settings, you have to make sure that you've put those into this indicator individually. And to do that, you need to kind of know a little bit about the bands, which signals you really want to tweak and which ones you may not want to mess with. Just out of the box, I know a lot of people, they get a little bit intimidated, but the real key here is to focus mostly on the lower ATR at first, maybe the upper ATR, the strong ATR, and the reversal power a little bit for these reversals. These are your bread and butter mostly for reversals. There are a ton of other things that do affect it, but these are the biggest bang for your buck values, especially this lower ATR value right there. So what we'll do to affect that is we'll go back to our inputs, and we will create one for the lower, I think you have to have a space there, and we'll call it lower ATR. And we'll make sure this is a double, because that actually uses decimal points. And we want that decimal point. And we may even want to change it from a 1, but we'll leave it at a 1 to begin with. So now we have a lower ATR setting, and we'll go back into the bands. And what we're going to do now is we're going to plug that right into that lower ATR setting right here by clicking this button, set. And we're going to go in here to the user inputs, select lower ATR, hit OK, and compile. And give it just a second to compile. It will compile also on the code charts as well, like it did before. And then we will reload this chart using the F5 button. It takes just a second for this to compile. I have a lot of coding boxes open, so it is what it is. All right, now we'll hit F5. And it should load the bot just in a second. There it is. All right, so now it did load the bot again. And we want to go into strategies and look at our new input option, which is right here. And so we were doing okay before, but let's say we want to go in and test it a little bit. Maybe we'll make it 1.4 and maybe 1.5, whatever you guys want to play around with, and then apply that. And as you will see, there will be a dynamic that changes here for where these entries are. It'll be a lot higher of a threshold. So yeah, we got one here that entered a little bit too late. It should have been that one, but it is what it is. And now you don't have all of these other entries. You just have really hard overbought entries that are starting to reverse. And in this case, it did not help your win rate, but playing around and knowing, well, it actually helped the win rate. It didn't help the P&L. It did help your drawdown a little bit. I would say overall it did some good, except for your overall profit was less, but so was your loss rate. So it's kind of, it's if and then one or the other. But to go ahead and thoroughly try to test this, one thing you might try to do is jump into the strategy analyzer. And this isn't always the best way to test, but it is a way to test, and it's a way to kind of gauge maybe where roughly you want to be with something. And so once this opens up, you want to jump into the optimization mode here, and hopefully this bot is compiled freshly enough that we can just get in and test it. And we called it Bands Tester, I believe. There it is. And so the way this works is you need to select an instrument to test on. In this case, we're testing the NQ, and a bar type to test on. And I use the ARC Renko BXT bars. I can't tell you for sure if that's the type you want to use, but that's the type I use. And I'm going to use the 852 bar. And I'll just test for the month. Let's see, we want to make sure we use high order fill resolution. And I will not do a lot on the profit and loss. I'm just going to change the values for the lower ATR. Although the profit and loss can be a big factor, we'll just play around with this setting first. And to play with this, it's going to basically try to figure out what increment you want to skip around in. And I'm going to do that in 0.05. And we will go from a minimum of 1 or 0.9. Let's do 0.9 as a minimum to 0.5 and just see where the sweet spot is with the 1-to-1, 50 take profit, 50 stop loss ratio. And there shouldn't be a whole lot of runs on this, increment runs. It'll probably be pretty well under 50 if I'm doing my math right in my head. We'll see here. So 11, yeah, so there's only 11 iterations. And so give that just a second. It does have to take a second to calculate all of that data and get it run through. But once it runs it, you'll kind of see what this spits out. It's usually pretty interesting. It's only a month of data, but it's still better than nothing. So normally I would also include commissions right here. I did not click that. That's always a good option to keep on there just because you do get a little bit taken off for those variables that you can't really calculate all the time. And there we go, it's finally kicking out the results. We'll make this big right here. So it's going to calculate and it's going to basically spit out which one has the best net profit. And so far the best net profit is right here. You do get a big drawdown though, and that's unfortunate because the drawdown is too big for a lot of PAs. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So you would end up with a red setting here. Now to do a deeper dive, you'd also want to add in the longs as well. Remember, I'm only testing shorts right now. I didn't plug in the signal for the longs, but you would do exactly the same thing. You just use that +1 in the signals and keep it there, or I'll show you in a second how to do it on another side of that. Alright, so here we go. We're going to go into the analysis here on this display. I want to see roughly what it did. Alright, so it looks like this is a really good setting in more recent times, which is more tempting to me because I'm looking to tune to more recent times and maybe go back and retune later. And this is how you can kind of do it a little bit differently than just messing around with the indicators the way I've shown you before. And I think